Welcome to From Stardust to Us, in-depth conversations with thought leaders, artists, and spiritual activists, navigating the challenges of our times with integrity, joy, and purpose. I'm Bernice Marie Daly.
And I'm Linnell Hayden. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate our listeners. You can find us on YouTube, Buzzsprout, or any place where podcasts are found. If you enjoy our conversation, please help us reach more people by subscribing, liking, and commenting. So let's get into this week's conversation.
We want to welcome today Paul and Laura Lee Robear from the Cuyamungue Institute. Greetings and greetings and greetings. I'd like to begin by introducing you. Paula and Laura Lee Robear are the co-directors of the Cuyamungue Institute, a 501(c) nonprofit educational research institute that was founded by the late anthropologist Felicitas D. Goodman in 1979. So under their leadership, the Institute has flourished as the world headquarters and international hub for the embodied meditative practice of ritual postures encoded in ancient art. They host weekly online experiential events, in-person worldwide workshops, speak at academic conferences, collaborate with researchers, artists, and cross-cultural wisdom keepers on a variety of projects. As teachers, speakers, authors, and change makers, they share the story and the age-old access code to our collective legacy of ancestral and self-knowledge made relevant for today's unprecedented challenges. They continue to question and unravel the stories we as a culture tell ourselves about who we truly are. So this is a quest that began with a founding multimedia company featuring Paul's book and video publishing and Laura's hosting of a popular nationally syndicated radio talk show interviewing over 3,000 leading-edge multidisciplinary researchers. So we are an auspicious moment to welcome our guest. And if I may, I'd like to begin with Paul. And I noticed you spoke about a topic that many of us talk about in an article that you just did the other day. It was on prayer. So, of course, that brought up a lot of questions. So what does that mean to you? How would you describe it? And does that mean we're saying prayers? Because I would think that's what a lot of people think. When you say prayer, a lot of people think saying prayers. So if you could talk about it and tell us what that's about, that's where we would like to start. Thank you so much.
Well, first of all, thank you, Bernice and Linnell, for having Laura and myself on. It's great to collaborate with you and all the work that you do as well. And so, I recently was addressing, as part of an ongoing series of essays and articles that we write in our newsletter, I was addressing the idea of the power of presence, prayer, and the healing mind. And when I was referring to prayer, I was looking at it from the perspective of it being a conscious act of self-awareness, a dialogue between self and the silence, gratitude, that attitude of gratitude, I guess, that springs from within. And taking it outside of some of the traditional restricted religious context, prayer, I think, is something that we find in all avenues of our lives. And it's about intention, but it's also just about being able to have a focused mind that brings about, we feel we're bringing about the change in our lives that are important to us and having the priorities of our lives in that relationship. So that's the way I approach this topic of prayer. And Laura and I, you mentioned that Laura had done a nationally syndicated radio program. And maybe some 20, maybe 30 years ago, we interviewed Larry Dossey, a doctor who wrote a book on this topic. And it was something that really inspired us to follow up and do more research on. So we've kind of had this this avenue of research started with us way back many years ago, prior to taking on the responsibilities of the Institute. But a lot of those key messages have stuck with us, and now we can look at it through the eyes of the posture practice, the research of Dr. Goodman, and how all of those avenues are reflected in a more powerful way for us personally, and hopefully for the community of people that
And if I may
participate.
add, it's
Yeah.
really for us about a point of view and an attitude and an orientation to our lives and the universe we inhabit. And when all is sacred, where everything we do is for our Creator, in celebration, in understanding of our Creator in this magnificent universe that is our home collectively. And I think another aspect of this was when we interviewed Tony Shear,
Right.
who was a flute player, and he said, Paul, I don't play the flute, I pray the flute. And I think that is really something that we enter into willingly.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I don't want to misquote, but I want to say the Dalai Lama, but it might not have been. But he was asked a certain question, and he said that his life was a prayer.
There you go.
So yeah, it's how you live, and walking on sacred ground is really every step you take in this life. And I wanted to mention, we had Laura. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just going to
go
follow
ahead.
up and say, and that power of stepping into presence, into the present world. I think that's also that power when we think of prayer also, is that it's not about being obsessed with the past or the future, but just acknowledging where we are in this moment and embracing that moment. That's prayer. And I think whether we look, like you mentioned, from the Buddhist traditions or the different practitioners of meditation around the world, that idea of us being able to move into the present, I mean, that is the struggle of us in the Western culture. We want to be able to own that, to reclaim the power of presence in our daily lives.
Yeah, definitely. I did want to mention just to our listeners and viewers, our community, that we did have Laura Lee on a few months ago, and that was a very popular episode. So we're glad to have you back. Yeah, I'm going to link your episode down below in the description when we publish this. But I was fortunate enough, very rarely do I have a Saturday morning available, but recently I did, and I went to one of your ecstatic ritual posture Zoom Saturday morning meetings, and it was really rich and deep. And I had, a different kind of spiritual sort of journeying experience. And it got me to wondering about the yoga, what's it called? The lotus posture that we're so familiar with,
Right.
which is what, here in the Western world, which is what I do a lot when I try to meditate. And I say try because this posture is very familiar, and I find my mind wandering a lot. Where when I went to your Zoom session Saturday morning, the ritual postures, I didn't. I was very focused. I was present. And I'm wondering, so is it the familiarity of that sitting lotus position that causes this repeating pattern of our mind, and then what you teach sort of disrupts that pattern and allows us to go deeper within, or is the lotus position not even a part of what you teach? Is that something completely separate?
Really
Well,
interesting question.
That is a great question, and it does come up because of the fact that those traditions really focused on the leg position, the hand positions, the mudras, all of that kind of stuff. There's definitely a relationship there. Many of our postures, going back, like Laura probably told you in the original interview, going back at like 30,000 years, many of them have different seated or standing or also lying down experiences. And so, but the cross-legged thing we see in Mesoamerica a lot. Of course, we see it in Asia, and but even all the way into Europe. And so there's something about that seems to have its impact. So when we look at the idea of ritual postures and what we practice, we try to take in the entire physiology because we see this as an embodied practice. So what Dr. Goodman looked at, and not being repetitious with what Laura had already shared with you in the previous interview, but what Dr. Goodman was looking at, she said, when we see these representations in these different traditions, why? And why are they repeated so often across the world in different ways? And so being a scientist, she wanted to maintain looking at it, studying it, and duplicating the posture to the very best of our ability. And so whether the mouth is open or closed, whether the eyes and the where the head is facing, all those kinds of conditions, he said, if you're going to call this a science, you're going to have to look at all the details of it. And so the cross-legged position is one of those positions that does show up. But breaking out from that, which was interesting, which is also an article recently that I was working on, and that is that that's more of a Western perception of the Indian practice, that cross-legged is only one aspect. They do a lot of standing, a lot of other types of kneeling, lots of kneeling positions and all of that. So we're kind of obsessed with the cross-legged thing because it does have a certain power. And then there's also the element of left in front of the right or right in front of the left and all those things that we look at as a practice. So every posture, we look at it as if it's like tuning in an antenna so that we can say, we're opening ourselves up, we're putting our body in a specific position, and we're going to see by putting our body in that position what that particular energy, that wavelength seems to happen for us and what seems to be coming from that experience, from that particular body.
I also say that the lotus position with the legs crossed very tightly is not common among the canon of postures that we use.
Right.
We're drawing from all over the world. We go back to the Paleolithic, the Neolithic eras, and we don't see a tight lotus all that often. We see some looser cross-legged.
Sure.
We see kneeling. We see sitting in a chair with your legs very orthogonal, and a lot of standing postures. So
yeah.
And the lotus is hard. It's hard on people. So
Yeah.
not an easy.
But
it gets harder the older you are, I think.
Yeah.
Sit in a chair or stand. That's
And if we see a cross-legged posture, we're like, you can sit in a chair with your ankle, either feet crossed, fold. That's good enough.
we have people at all different levels of experience.
We find a lot of it is the intent, that you come in with an open heart, that you come in with willingness to surrender to this and allow the effect to take place. It's not about so much about being so precise. And you certainly don't want to put yourself in a position of agony, or you're focused on the body. If your intellect is like, am I doing this right? You're not dropping down into letting that other aspect of your mind come forward. And we find very much it's a beta plus theta. It's a hybrid state of mind. You're here and you're there. There's a beautiful artifact that Felicitas was her favorite. You say, what was her favorite artifact of all? It's not even a posture. It's where you see 3 sets of eyes. And the idea is that you're looking into this reality simultaneously with looking at that alternate reality. You're in a hybrid state of mind. So, yeah, we find your willingness and your attitude more important than anything else.
Yeah.
To go from 30,000 years ago to now, I'm hearing this as an embodied kind of mindfulness, if that would be appropriate terminology. And in scientific language, over the last couple of decades, there's an approach called neurotheology, which is looking at prayer, mindfulness, trance, and so forth, as carrying some kind of a sense of being accompanied. Can you say something about that? That it has effect, that it actually has effect on our body and mind and so forth, and also this sense of not being alone. Can you say something about that?
Well, I'll just start by saying, that was such a key awakening for me when I worked with Dr. Goodman, was this concept of embodied spirituality, because there were so many practices out in the world that takes you off into the world of alternate reality experiences. But there's something about honoring the physiology and having the physiology be engaging in that practice, which comes back to this idea of mindfulness. And that is that we have an awareness, a peacefulness within ourselves, that we can own the presence of our own body and our own space and our own way of being. And so that's that reminder of that the body is, it is the system for us to acknowledge and to explore what is referred to as spirituality. Is what it allows us to have that full spectrum of experiences. It's sort of a dysfunction to get so lost in the idea of spirituality and deny the body and to deny the world that surrounds us. If we can integrate those two worlds together, the gift of life, the gift of the body, the gift of all that surrounds us, and incorporate the entire spectrum of whatever spirituality wants to bring to us. But when we do it through the body, there's an acknowledgement, there's a grounding that happens that seems to bring about the most broadest sense of presence and what's referred to as mindfulness.
Well, if I may add to that, then, so our universe has created a vehicle, an earth suit, you could call it, and it's equipped with so many receptor sites, so many organs of perception. And the five senses that we know and commonly use in our everyday world, well, we have the equivalent in the inner senses, but a whole lot more of sensory perception apparatus that is activated in these altered states. And so we find that you mentioned the sense of not being alone. We find that the universe is teeming with life and presence and intelligence and communicative beings that have so much to say to us when we lift that veil and our inner senses are awakened and activated. And it's glorious to understand the cosmos as our backyard. As we are part of a huge universe of beings. It goes back to Thomas Berry saying universe is not a collection of objects. It's a community of beings of which we are just a part of it. And that is ecstatic to understand that we are so much more in a universe that is so much more than our current society indicates.
You talk about the universe being benevolent, and also that we collectively are going through a dark night of the soul, the hero's journey. Right now, we're in the dark night of the soul. And, the hero's journey, we're all very familiar with it. It shows up in Hollywood movies and literature. And, you go out on it, you start at home, you go out on a quest, you meet your mentor, have some trials and tribulations, and then you come back home after the big showdown, whatever that is. And this works with anything, comedy, thrillers, you come back home with this newfound wisdom. So within that storyline, I feel like we are at the part, the life or death moment, collectively. And it can be very scary. Very jarring. Everybody's overwhelmed. How do you stay grounded in your knowing that the universe is benevolent? And what can you say to those listening who might be feeling overwhelmed? What can they do at home right now? It's occurred to me, I'm not sure in our interview here today, we've yet sort of given a bullet point of what exactly the ecstatic ritual trance is. Maybe if we haven't done that, maybe we can also do that. But what can people at home do who might be overwhelmed? And I guess the first part of my question is, what makes you so certain the universe is benevolent while, when all of this chaos is going on around us? What's that about?
Fair question. Yeah.
Deep question for sure.
That's a metal log, Laura Lee.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a 2 or 3 part question too.
Yeah, well, no, it's a good question, and it should be addressed. I have to have, if I can bring up a word, faith. I have to have faith in life itself, in the journey of the human experience, that there is this element that surrounds us, that when we attach ourselves to the full-on dream of the human experience, that we can have access to something more powerful than ourselves, and that whether it's through family, through community, or through throughout the world, that we can have something that has a more profound and deeper meaning for us to pursue and to understand. I'm you know, I walk that razor's edge because I'm not a scientist. I'm one that's been always driven by personal experience. It's always been my experience from teenager years to now, which is about a couple of years ago. But anyway, so there's been that drive from my youth that I just wanted something bigger, greater, and I wanted to be connected to something more. And it wasn't necessarily um, Pollyanna. I wanted to also have those elements of reality that can give us some kind of foundational evidence of that being there. And that's why Laura mentioned Thomas Berry as a great example of someone who was able to take the two worlds and put it into language that addressed it in a way that helps us helps us weave that journey of life itself. So I don't know if I'm answering the question specifically, but that's sort of where I navigate this, how I pursue this. Our institute was founded by a scientist. She spoke 8 languages. She traveled the world, well respected female, a scholar, and all of these things. And I'm not that, but I do love the fact that I can have the foundation of that research to start with and say, okay, she did the heavy lifting. She did the heavy lifting. And so now, as someone who likes to approach the world from the experiential level, how can I build on that and still be respectful to the fact that we want to recognize the elements of science as it surrounds us?
If I may add something,
Sure.
I was having this very debate with a more science-minded, very dear friend of ours.
Oh, yeah.
And she was listening, she was asking us similar questions, and she was listening to this, and she said, well, Gregory Bateson wanted to live. He was choosing to live in an enchanted world. And so though as a scientist, he was saying, well, I just want to embrace this because it's a nicer point of view than science giving us a cold, dead universe that's slowly winding down and dying where nobody's at home. And she goes, I appreciate your fantasies that you have in your, and I'm like, fantasies. I said, yeah, well, let's take this back because we've got our current scientific worldview, but we have this very ancient and indigenous worldview.
Right.
And I said, can they be combined? I appreciate science and all of its perspective. It's not the only game in town. It is not the only myth by which we can live by. It works. But so does this other direct experience of this enchanted world. And part of the meaning of benevolence that the universe gives us over and over and over again are some of the messages that come through. We have overseen, we have hosted thousands and thousands of people in this work. And what bubbles up, and these are people who are not versed in any particular discipline, mindset, background, whatever, average people who aren't looking at, hey, the world's mythologies or looking at indigenous wisdom or any of it. But
Yeah.
here's what bubbles up. You lost your father, I know, recently,
Yes.
Linnell.
Yes.
I lost mine recently. It's devastating.
Mhm.
But what comes through so much of the time is, hey, there's life, there's death, and there's the promise of rebirth. There's cycles upon cycles. There's these grand cycles of the universe. And it comes forward to say, we have these momentary sojourns, these momentary lifetimes, but life goes on. Death is now the opening to a much larger journey. The ancestors come forward in our, and they have much to say. And they tell us there's cycles upon cycles. There's lessons to be learned. There's compassion. There's gratitude that bubbles up. There's this sense of being at one with the all. There's this sense of the embrace of the universe and the spirits, that we are coming home again, that we are supported, that we are loved, that we are welcome to this universe and this greater world over and over and over again, that we can transform and momentarily in our visionary state. We are the air, we are the waters, we are the panther that walks, we are the tiny grub that walks, we are all of life is singing and celebrating, and we are being welcomed home to the web of life. And over and over and over again, we have these little journeys, these hero journeys And the gift that we come home with is, oh, we are part of something alive, and we are eternal, and we are over and over again. We are transformed again and again to enjoy these lifetimes, to open our eyes to this huge, broad, beautiful universe over and over again. And this collection of journeys sings the song of life over and over again. So it doesn't matter where we are, the challenges ahead. We know that in the hero journey, untold heroes before us have walked these paths, and so will we, and so will those coming up behind us. We are part of the vast network.
Yeah. And maybe that was
It's a joy.
I was going to say maybe, and that's the power and the success of the Joseph Campbell research, and when he did that first PBS special back with Bill Moyers, and how all of a sudden PBS became like the #1 watched television program in the world at that time.
That's a message you all need to hear.
It took over. It took over, and it spoke a language that, like you said, everyday people could understand. He was able to bring it to us in a way that we can understand that life itself has a mythopoetic way of it unfolding itself. You know, if you wake up in the morning and you go see a fellow scientist and you say, "God, I enjoyed the sunrise this morning," the scientist doesn't argue. Well, the sun didn't rise. Actually, what happened was the planet was spinning, and the sun. It's like, you know, we know that, but can we have a little bit of myth and understandings in our lives that gives the human story its own vocabulary, its own way? And so, you know, I know it was one of the things that Dr. Goodman said is he said, "Who am I to try to change the language of the ancients? I'm going to talk about the world of spirits. I'm going to talk about some of these concepts that you
bubble
know,
up in our visions. But they're also
get
there
past
in
the
the
languaging and allow for the fact is that these are the ancient ones. Put it to language for us." Yeah.
Well, the myths are so akin to what we find in our direct experience.
Yeah.
So it gives us the assuredness that we are tapping into that same source. And I'd say the universe is benevolent because there's so many different avenues to open that door. We are built to open that door, and a universe that gives us redundancy and many, 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 many pathways to find our way home. Oh yeah, it is calling us home. Find your path. We represent one path among a multitude. Find what resonates, find what works for you. Just open up the door.
Find a path.
And walk a path. Yeah. Find a practice.
Yeah.
Find your community. Find your fellow adventurers and journeyers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know both of you have very beautiful paths, and I'm delighted. We are delighted to be here to share notes along the way.
Thank you. There are so many things now swirling through my head as you started sharing all this. One of the comments I wanted to kind of hold up a little bit was this notion of being embodied, and sort of tongue in cheek. What do you mean by body? Are you only talking about human bodies? What other kind of bodies are there? And sort of playing on that. And you've been talking around all of this for the last several minutes already, but that my body doesn't end right here. And also the embodiment of, coming from Earth, from Mother Earth herself, and then the whole cosmic evolutionary story, but the idea of it being embodied. And you talk about these experiences that you share with people, and they have, profound personal experiences that can be actually measure their blood pressure, or watch their anxiety, or other things, for those who need or want to measure something. Can you give us an example? I know I'd even be game for you to lead us in a little piece of a posture or a ritual. But can you give us an example of what someone may experience? Maybe something that pops off that you remember, from your many different rituals that you have offered. Something that like jumps out at you and says, this is what happens for people. And this is what makes it so impactful. And this is what kind of goes beyond the boundaries of just our rational mind. It's not really a question. It's sort of
Yeah.
a circular kind of.
Exploration.
So
Good.
yeah, I hand that off to you.
Like, what does this all mean? Like Paul says, it's not just cosmic TV. It actually has meaning.
Right.
And it's part of a sense of you that is speaking the language of spirit, that isn't just words, but putting us through the paces of actually going on a journey in a body that appears to be like a dream body or an energy body. We know how to navigate this alternate reality. It has a landscape and a topography and a rule set that is a world that we all know. We all know it. People for the first times have very effective peak experiences quite often because we know this landscape.
Mm.
And it wants to have a teaching moment. Do you have one that you want to recount
Well,
in particular?
first want to just mention that this idea of embodiment, like you've mentioned so succinctly, Bernice, and it goes beyond the body and talking about the fact that it's an extension of ourselves. And we bring up the C word, consciousness, and consciousness being a catch-all term that means a lot to different things to
Right.
many people, but ultimately it's an extension of ourselves that's just as real as our body, our physical body, and that level of consciousness and how that interacts with the world around us, that we're integrating that consciousness along with our bodies for the holistic experience of who we are. And coming back to the second part of your question, and that is that people having automatic experiences without being told. We know that there's certain gestures that we do, and that we end up finding them in artifacts afterwards, research-wise. But there may be something like when someone gifts you something, you go, "Oh, thank you so much. That is, I really want to thank you for thinking of me." Immediately we put the right hand in the left hand.
Right.
What does that
Right.
mean? That's a very specific posture that we use. Fingers
It's
together,
found all
thumbs
over the world,
extended,
in
found all
fact.
over the world.
Mm.
And it's a
I'll tell you what
posture.
it means. I do it all the time. I do it all
Yeah.
the time.
Well, you're connecting your heart to your solar plexus. And we have friends in Jin Shin Jitsu who say, oh, well, that organ and connecting up with this one, and your hands are the meridians. And, it's very meaningful to them as well. They find a lot of correlation. But go
Right.
ahead.
Well, no, what you're
What
saying
does
is
it
correct, and
mean?
it's in the,
Yeah.
and it's a
It's a
loving,
healing posture.
it's a healing posture, a loving
Mhm.
embrace of self. And like you said, whenever you put your hands on two different parts of the body, there's a connection happening. That's not part of our research to be able to verify that, but we know that there's something happening there, that
Right.
there's something
Right.
on the neurotheological level of that we're opening ourselves to a whole spectrum of experiences by involving the body. And so the traditional way we bring the hands together is prayer, but there's also
Right.
cultures that have other ways of holding the hands, and they do different things with the hands, but you can tell immediately that's a prayerful posture, the way that they're
Right.
trying their
And it's
hand.
usually held right in front of the heart
And there's
or the
something
belly.
about that, the
Yeah.
meaning of that. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Invoking the
Right.
sacred,
Well,
bringing it home.
one thing
Right.
that I think happened since we've last spoken was we went to the Anthropology of Consciousness conference, and
Oh,
two
yeah.
of the anthropologists that we work with, Todd and Christine Van Poel of the University of Missouri, were also there. And Todd, for his paper, his part, presented his statistical analysis where we gave him the data from multiples of 4 different postures that he wanted to analyze. One
Mm-hmm.
of them was a healing posture. This one right here, again,
Mm-hmm.
right over the navel, holding your hands together. And
Okay.
he
Doing
said,
it.
in
I'm
my
doing it.
analysis, I'm looking at like 126 different elements that are quite common, from what are you seeing, what are you feeling, what is happening, what's resolving, da 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 da. And he said, surprisingly, what was it, 59% in the one healing posture, because we wanted to give him an array of different postures. 59% in the healing posture of people's report said the word healing. And he said, mind you, this wasn't about, I feel balanced, I feel resolution, I feel better, I feel peace. This was the word healing. And he
Right.
said, compare this to over here. We didn't hear about healing. We saw about visionary this or that or that.
Right.
But to him, it was like, yes, these particular postures each have purposeful and results and different kinds of experiences that can be categorized like that. And so,
and to add to that, the protocol established by Dr. Goodman from the beginning days is that you don't tell people up front, this is going to be a healing posture. You just simply hold the posture. You don't tell them even the background of where the artifact came from.
you don't show
You
them
do
the
the
artifact.
practice,
Yeah.
and when the practice is over, we say, okay, this is that posture. This came from Northwest Coast. We also find it in Europe. We find it here and there and there. And we have found over the years that this brings out a strong sense of healing. And people say, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I was journaling, was this whole experience of healing. So
the other thing that is fascinating to me is how much our spontaneous experiences can mirror particular protocols of experiences that also people find in different modalities. In
Give me an
Goodman, we
example.
always say this is compatible with all other modalities.
Right.
And I find that we're given this beautiful blueprint of anatomy with all of these capacities. And over time, people have found so many ways of activating what we do spontaneously, what we do intentionally, what is these various modalities of awakening and healing and processing and just becoming whole. And one of them that I find over and over is a spontaneous soul retrieval. We don't practice soul retrieval as an intent. We don't go in like some people and say, we're going to do a soul retrieval. Those are very effective, by the way. But it's fascinating to me when they just happen. And I've had a series of them. And you asked to take you inside a particular experience. Well, often seeing is so different here. You can see on the back of your eyelids. You can see from an inner screen lighting up. You can see in a shady kind of way with colors, vibrant colors moving around, or you can see in full technicolor. You can see scenes. And I think we've all had the daydream where it's like a movie reel opens up and you're watching yourself in some scenario or a memory. Yes, you've had those. And I had this one where, I don't know, it just came up because we're like peeling an onion layers, and there's some part of us that knows us better than we know ourselves. I think we're tapping into that soul aspect of us when we do this. And so I watched this little movie reel of myself as a child hearing something an adult says that was very wounding, that kind of just struck me. And it was just became a knot that eventually needed to unravel. Well, this time was its unraveling. And so I watched, and I knew the mind of me as a child. I was in the mind of me as an adult where I am now. I was in the mind of the adult who didn't mean to wound me, but it hit that way. And I saw all of this, and there was just so much forgiveness that came forth of me for my child misunderstanding, for me as an adult, for that person saying this, for the whole thing, all this unraveling, unraveling, unraveling. And then I saw this just wisdom bubble up that seemed to come into all my pores and heal it all. And everything was dissolved. And then as the drum slows down that Paul is beating, which it's amazing the timing when something's resolved and then in the outer world the drum's coming to an end and everything's coming home. I felt this piece, this little piece of me flying home, hit my chest, come home. And then it was me as the mother welcoming the child, this missing piece of me that had gone in hiding all this time, that was disassociated. It comes flying home. And then it's me as the child, tearful but joyful at coming home again. It was all of this multidimensional aspect of me. And it comes flying into my chest as the dumb, tears, the whole thing. And I just felt this homecoming, this part of me integrate now into all of me with the blessings of the forces that brought it to bear. And like, oh my God, okay, what can I call it? A soul retrieval. Some piece of me made finding its way home. So I think we have these mini journeys where piece after piece after piece were made whole, all the puzzle pieces. And eventually,
It reminds me, I know Linnell is busting here wanting to jump in. I just want to say it does remind me of of our dreamland when we have dreams. So maybe after I'd like to find out if there's a correspondence in a certain kind of way. Every night we go to sleep, hopefully, and some of us remember our dreams and some of us don't, but there seems to be some magic happening there that's somewhat similar. But Linnell, please.
Yeah, we can touch on the dream work too. That's interesting. That's just another part of consciousness, I think. But I was looking at one thing I love about the work you're doing. I was looking at your website, and your advisory committee is made up of scientists and professors. And so this is grounded science, which correlates with the indigenous wisdom. They're sort of coming together. This isn't some new agey, fluffy stuff. This is actual, studied, practice. And we have been trained basically to look outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit more about consciousness, look outside of ourselves for answers and experts. And, and that's even with a lot of religions. When really the universe is also within, and there's many wisdom traditions, Christianity included, the body being the temple, and what is it? The kingdom of God is within, they talk about the universe being within you as well as outside you. So it's all one connected. They have, there's a term in Sanskrit called anahatanada, which means sort of the vibrating, singing, universe.
Yeah.
And Paul, you wrote recently an article about the quantum mind. And I'll just read you a couple sentences that really hit home with me. Terms like quantum mind or quantum consciousness point to the idea that consciousness is not just neurons firing in the brain. Instead, they suggest that consciousness may be a fundamental feature of the universe, woven into the very fabric of space, time, and matter. In this view, our individual awareness is not isolated, but part of a greater field of intelligent consciousness that permeates all of existence. And that's been my experience, which, I don't want to go into now. I want to, if you can expand on that, this universal consciousness in which we are. We're not a part, we are. In my view, my experience.
We share that view.
Yeah. So I would just love to hear either of you, or Paul, you wrote the article. What if you'd like to expand on that a little bit?
It's funny because that article was triggered by the fact that we do have a scientific friend of ours who kind of cringes because he feels that people are misusing the term quantum too much. It's become a catch-all term to explain everything, and every book by certain authors starts out with the word quantum in the title. So I said, okay, I want to address quantum, but I also want to be respectful to the fact that, some physicians and physicists cringe at the idea of the overuse of the word quantum. So I wanted to try to own it in a way that described our work and what we do, and giving it language that can be an inclusive language. Don't want to for a second pretend to be a physicist. I don't even want to pretend to understand the quantum field and all the research that's been going on. And it's way up there. It's beautiful, fantastic. But those little bit of nuggets that we learn about what the physicists are telling us, wait a minute, I want that nugget and I want that nugget, because it really helps give me language. It echoes, it gives us language. And so that's how I grabbed onto that idea of quantum consciousness and wanting to address it, because it came up in one of our sessions that someone brought that
we're always
question.
talking about that we find so much correlation in a group of experiences that we have to ask. Well, when quantum physicists talk about effect at a distance, spooky effect at a distance, or quantum entanglement, seems to us that's what we're experiencing. Right? Why should it only be out there? We're made of the entire fabric of the universe. And our experience is just that beautiful descriptive, that consciousness is a fundamental part of the layers of reality. And we're all of that.
And that integration of particles of all of matter and how it can be
Consciousness just not in here. It's
affected
everywhere.
from great distances. It's
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I think it's an old world view, in my opinion, that consciousness comes
Yeah.
from our brain.
Right.
It's really, all matter is of consciousness in my experience.
Beautifully said.
And all
It's-
of us on this journey seem to come to that same conclusion.
Yeah, yeah. And why is that? So many different traditions have that, maybe they say it in different language, but it's the same conclusion, really.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful conclusion, isn't
Yeah.
it? That's the universe I want to live in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't have to make it up. I just go and experience it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in addressing the conversation we had about dreams a few minutes ago,
Oh, yeah.
coming back to that, and when we start looking to some of the indigenous world, like the Aboriginals of Australia, where they talk about dream time very specific, and how they communicate in dream time, they come up with things that just is outside of Western's perspective of how the world functions, and they've always known it. I don't know how many. Their tradition goes back 30 more.
Probably 60 or 80,000
Okay.
years, they say.
Yeah. So forever. And they have a way of communicating across great distances just through thought. And some there that just cannot be denied. It has to be respected. And so we, as the Western culture that sometimes is the babies of these topics, have to engage ourselves and say, okay, before we just dismiss the idea of dreams not being real or being real, either way, finding a way that let's honor the fact is that the original scientists found a way for this to have for it to matter, that it has evidence-based experiences, and we want to tap into that world to understand it more. And it's become much more acceptable in the world of science to look to the indigenous world for knowledge and for information, and not just be so dismissive and as we had been in the past.
That's true.
Also, the centers of the dream mind
Mm.
are said by a neurologist friend of ours
Right.
to be activated, some but not all,
Right.
simultaneous with the centers of the waking mind.
Mm.
And so truly a hybrid state.
Mhm.
And so
Oh.
if our dream mind and our waking mind can communicate in real time,
Mhm.
then that would be a good description of our experience. We know we're standing in a posture, we know a drum is beating, but then we're also often running into this alternate world
Right. Right.
simultaneously. And
Right.
interesting things can happen
Well,
that
we're able
we
to-
feel in our bodies, in our physical bodies. They're so integrated.
Yeah. There's things we can do in our dreams, like our regular dreams that we might have at night, that I can't do myself, like walk on the ceiling and other such things that
Exactly.
justify the laws of gravity or whatever.
I think that's why we're so fascinated by superheroes, is because we do have superpowers in this alternate reality.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. So there's two words running around my little head here, and one is imagination, creativity and imagination, and the other is it's not really a rhetorical question, but it's like I wonder about it, about silence.
Mm.
So much of the prayer practices and the terms of meditation and things that you were referring to earlier create a space of silence. And I have attended as you have with you all, and the drumming that goes on during these postures, and many other kinds of ceremonies and rituals that I've participated in, and that drumming is like essential, holding, grounding,
Yeah.
vibrating. And I've been in many kinds of experiences where there is this kind of profound silence that also kind of vibrates. And I was wondering if you wanted to
Oh, yes.
say a little bit
Yeah.
about silence in this whole world that you're discussing.
Well, this is a fun aspect of the work that we are continuing to research. And of course, we know the physiological shift that happens from putting the body in a specific position without the need for an outside agent such as drumming or sound induction to see what happens to the physiology. But so there is a reality to this, that the posture itself, even in silence, has an effect. The adding the sound to it the external sound of a drumming or rattling or some kind of rhythmic beat seems to help us, especially in the Western world, to occupy that right brain. The left brain
Left brain.
aspect of ourselves. Yeah, the left brain aspect of ourselves. So that it
No, it's
just
the right brain. Go ahead.
it's right brain.
Yeah.
And it opens up to the alternative experience of ourselves. So we can have the full expression of what presence can be. So that is a significant part of work. That's more the literal answer to what you're asking. But also, this silence is contained within the experience itself. So whether there's an external sound or not, that doesn't disturb the fact that silence maintains itself throughout the practice itself as well. And that's part of.
We often go into a space where we're not hearing anything.
Right.
And we often go into a space where we meet the void.
Yeah.
And then people describe it. I was there in the void, and it was teeming with potentiality. It was
Yes.
the implicate order before it became explicate. It's a beautiful space of
Yes.
renewal and incubation and energy. And it's just people recognize it. Or
Yeah.
people say, was there at the still point in that I could feel the storm around me.
Mm.
And I'm there in the eye of the storm, in the stillness. And it's interesting how people, we're very action oriented, very lot stuff goes on. This is not a meditation to delete everything that comes up
Right.
in the mind.
That's a good point.
Highly active.
Mm.
But when people meet at the still point, it's delicious. It's regenerating. It's rejuvenating. It's I was there in utter peace and silence like I've never heard. It's really interesting. Just to
Yeah.
add to what you had to say.
Well, just
Yeah.
one last sentence building on what you just said, which is very important about our practice. And that is that unlike some of the traditional concentration styles of meditation where you want to avoid letting the thought process get involved and you're trying to maintain a silent vision, this is something that's totally interactive. The entire field of creative intelligence is flowing through us, and we're allowing that to be there. We have the discernment to know the difference between that, the everyday monkey mind thinking and that of a thought that's flowing from something, a source of knowledge and of experience of ourselves from the very spirit of who we are. And we don't want to deny that. We want to allow that to be there. And that's why in our practice, people can have these vivid storylines appear of experiences because they don't deny the fact that
you're taking on a journey, and
you're taking on the journey and you acknowledging that let it be for what it is, and don't engage the intellect to start. No, I don't want to go there, or this is not real. Just be there. See what
you're receiving a vision. You're not
going to this state of reception.
Right. Not a critique. This is not a critique. This is the time to breathe with it and be there fully present.
Thank you, Bernice. Yeah.
Yeah. No overthinking in journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll just,
it's time when
bring
you
it right back down to
journal
earth.
to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and it's a wonderful space to be without words. It's a wonderful space to be in direct experience and engage that other part of us.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Laura Lee, you talked about a time when you had what you describe as a soul retrieval, a piece of your wounded self coming back home. And I'm wondering, and you also talk about indigenous wisdom, and I imagine there's some, or not indigenous, ancestral wisdom. I imagine that there's some ancestral healing as well. And I'm wondering, what might the difference be with regards to ancestral healing as opposed to a personal soul healing, as far as, for the person and also the community at large? Does that make sense, that question?
Yeah. Do you want to take that one, Paul?
Well, she asked you specifically because of your
Yeah.
I'll let you have the talking stick.
Yeah.
I have another question I can go to if you need to think about that.
The ancestors show up in so many different ways with us. And, sometimes people are saying, I had this personal, but I know it came from the mother or the father, and I'm sending that healing back down the timeline. I'm ending that wound and that trauma for us. So it seems to be that we're not just here for ourselves, we're here for the entire community. We're here and we feel that there's bolts of energy that come down from the cosmos, and it's here from Mother Earth, and we're the transmitters, receivers. We're part of the node point to like push that through the network of energy. We get that a lot, that sense a lot. We're here to dance with the ancestors. We're invited often. I mean, one of the most common experiences is I'm there and I'm in a circle and everybody's dancing, and we're dancing, and there's a fire going, and we're dancing to wake up the energy, to keep the universe going, to keep the gears going. It just seems that it is personal, but it's also collective. And then what else is interesting is this, yes, you can do this. Some of my most profound, the reason I've joined this board of directors was because a personal journey done alone sent me here, gave me the vision to do that. So we have these journeys that are just for us, but also it's more fun and powerful to do it with a group. And now we can do it on a weekly basis. We've got Zoom.
Right.
And so we find that over and over again, the multifaceted aspect of a group healing comes forward, where it's not just for us. We find things reiterated. We find things strengthened. We find that it's not just one line. This work is very literary. It's very literate, not literal, but it's very literate. All of the beauty of our mythologies and our spoken words and our chanting and our coming together in our community and our dialogue, it's rich with all of that. The universe speaks to us the same way that all of that beautiful body of knowledge that we dance, we sing, we act with theater. I mean, it's so literate.
Yeah.
And so we find over and over again, our message is strengthened by everyone else's message. It gets to be fascinating that way. And so the ancestral knowledge is that complete body of human wisdom. And it seems to be coming up, sparkling, showing us that these currents are there for us. These currents exist through time. The sages of the ages have been singing these songs. And so we feel like we can be wiser when we're in the whole community of all of the wisdom and all of the wisdom traditions and their echoings.
All the wisdom
I can only
traditions.
say it like that.
Yeah. I mean, that comes back to, how we found Dr. Goodman in the first place. We were just saying, as Laura was doing an interview on an actually syndicated radio program, and where are my ancestors? Because it was so
Where are
much
my
emphasis.
indigenous ancestors?
Because there's so much
Yeah.
emphasis that to be indigenous, everybody, but white people don't have indigenous roots or something. Like I want to play the game, but I don't want to step in someone else's tradition. I'm not Native American. I'm not
far enough.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I'm not that. I'm not that tradition.
We're
So
getting very passionate.
yeah.
about
So
it.
how do we fit in, and how do we understand that? So a lot of times I like the word of ancestral wisdom rather than
Yeah.
indigenous wisdom, because people get stuck on indigenous being somebody else and not us.
Or that culture's
Even
closed
though-
off to us. Yeah.
Even though, which Dr. Goodman was really clear on, the indigenous roots
Or for all of us. We
Go
can
back.
all trace.
right.
And in fact, that is one of her key gifts to us in the Western world is here's a path where you can go back to that font of wisdom, that wellspring, where we were, all of us.
Yeah.
I believe it's one family of man, but if you don't want to step on other cultures' toes, go back to the old European ways, back to Lascaux, she said. And by that, she meant all the Gravettian cultures.
Right.
I'm glad you
Right.
brought that up
Right.
because so many people are so sensitive now to cultural appropriation for good reason.
Right.
But I think that the indigenous world would love for the people, white people, so to speak, to find their indigenous roots again. We would then reconnect to the sacredness of life, which is
Yeah.
a way of life for all indigenous. We just have to go back pretty far, just like all mankind does. So yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. I was going to actually ask about that for people that are really interested and intrigued by this conversation, if they wanted to check you out, but they're like, oh, this might be a cultural appropriation. So
Yeah, and that's important. And there is a lot of that has happened and it's been done inappropriately. And it's important for us to acknowledge that. But part of the research of what Goodman established is that let's look worldwide. Let's not get stuck in one particular cultural phenomenon or experience because that's not our area
What
of
do they all have in
expertise.
common?
Yeah.
That's
So
universal. And
exactly.
that belongs to all of us.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And you also remind me, Laura and I had the great privilege of interviewing Vine Deloria Jr., who was a
Ah,
Native American
yes,
scholar and just one of the premier scholars, I think, from that
yes,
level. He wrote the book God is Red, and we
yes.
interviewed him, and he said, I did a presentation at an event. And I took people through a little ritual. He says that all of the white people were coming up. I was, oh my God, that was the most powerful thing in my life. He says, for us Native people, that was like smoking a cigarette. That was nothing. He says, these people, he says, you cannot, he says, I understand people are upset that Native peoples are sharing information with other cultures, but we don't have any more time to waste. We have to share a universal human story together. We have to heal together, and we have to find a way that whatever we've learned can be transmitted. Because otherwise, these guys, and especially in his day,
The clock will run out.
the people at the steering wheel were the white civilization that were running things. Said we got to get these people on board. We got to help them. We got to educate them. We have to give them a couple of experiences to get them beyond their limitations. And so, I think that's part of the story as well. So I do
And we can
appreciate.
argue that the same rituals were practiced in old Europe.
Mm.
We
Yeah.
And the
find
Celtic
citations.
traditions with the drumming and
Yeah.
Yeah. Other such things.
I
Yeah.
think that's part of, how we separated ourselves from the sacredness of, the earth and our own selves even, and look for answers outside of ourselves.
Mm.
Somebody else has the answer, the priest has the answer, and God is living off planet somewhere up there in the universe. And, so yeah, we need to, part of coming back
Bring
home,
it home.
bring it home. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of the conversation these days about grief and people's need to grieve and the grieving process is talking a great deal about intergenerational, this term they use most often, intergenerational grief, which I think is certainly touching on the kind of storyline that we're all been talking about here. Um, Linnell, did you have another? Because I have something else, of course, but
No,
did you?
that was it. The cultural
Okay.
appropriation was my.
Well, I do want to mention grief. And I will say that intense and immense pain can come up in our experiences. It's not as common as all the positive flourishing, but we find that physical pain can come up. And Goodman would describe it as it's clearing of the energy meridians in your body. Emotional pain can come up, deep, deep sorrow and grieving. People have come out of their visions just releasing in a
Right,
bucket of tears.
right.
And a lot of it will resolve itself, but we also feel like maybe this is Mother Earth's griefs that we're helping her process. That comes up a lot. Maybe this is just ancestral grief. Maybe
Mhm.
this is it, but it's important to release it. And
Yeah,
so we show up to do our duty in that way as well.
Mm.
right, right.
Yeah.
Well, before we end, I want to take a little turn in the
Okay.
conversation, if I
Yeah.
may, because you also offer, I believe, on at least a monthly basis, maybe more often than that, what you call conversations for exploration. And
Mm.
this is a whole wide variety of topics. Uh, just a couple of examples. I just looked real quick. AI, planetary mind, Native American art, ancient mysteries, unexplained encounters. You're like everywhere, all over the place here. What are these offerings about? What is the common thread? Um, could you say something about
Yeah.
this piece of your work and maybe an example of something that you found particularly intriguing that you did recently?
Well, I'll start first because Laura is the one who can really go on to more details about it. But I will say that the original concept here is that we took our skills as media people from the past with a specific focus now and saying we want to understand the work that we're doing, the part of all of this that we're dedicating ourselves to, how do we fit into the full spectrum of the human experience? And who are those scholars out there on like journeys that are willing to share and say, can we come together? And how can we find those fundamental areas of research that I'll never have time in my lifetime to explore? Maybe, for example, the Deep Time Network, or maybe
The Guild for Spiritual
the
Living.
Guild for Spiritual Living, right? Exactly. That people go on these journeys for a lifetime of research and work. Say, can we talk to you? Let's sit down with Jennifer Morgan.
Notes
Can we sit
along
down?
the
Yeah,
way.
exactly.
And Linnell, you're on our list.
Yeah.
We've already talked to you, Bernice.
Yeah.
More conversations to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we have the great gift of Laura being a really, I think, a very skilled interviewer.
Oh,
And
that's
we
sweet.
had,
Thanks.
after all of those years of using the radio, but the radio thing without focus is just a random journey. We have a focus. And so we're going to use this avenue of her skill set and our institute to bring the two worlds together. And so we've had the opportunities to bring in, and when we call it, like, hosting a podcast, you call up somebody and say, hey, we're an educational institution based on anthropological research. People's ears perk up and they want to join in. Oh, good. I want to be a part of that. And
Wow.
so, yeah.
Well, I would say that the radio show it was purposeful. There
Yeah,
was
I
a
know.
quest. We're in a quest.
Yeah.
Who are we?
Right.
Where did we come from? Where are we going? What's it all about?
Right.
How do we navigate this world
Mm.
optimally? How do we find our skills and use them? How do we put our finger to the wind and figure out where our path
True.
is? But yes, it is more purposeful now because we want to say, what are we finding in common with other spiritual traditions? We are all on a very similar quest. Let's join hands and talk about this and share what's going on and what are we learning. And let's celebrate one another. Let's celebrate this growing movement over the decades.
Mm.
And what is the world that we all want to collectively create? Let's have a voice in this.
Yeah.
Let's speak up our own truths and see and try to build the way as well. So it's all about that. But we find conversation to be one of the most entertaining forms of finding our path. We find conversation so bonding and encouraging and life supporting and educational. So we love being on both sides of the host
Wonderful.
guest equation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you both for all your work all these years.
And thank you
Um,
both
Yeah.
for everything that you're doing. So
Well, there was a work that was done 25, 30 years ago by Paul Ray talking about the cultural creatives. And he said, if you look at the percentage of people that fit in that category, we're by far a majority. We just don't work together. We're all sitting around individually thinking we own the piece of knowledge, and now I got a piece of knowledge, and everybody's owning their piece of knowledge, and we're saying,
Right.
yeah, I know, but I
together.
don't have
Yeah.
enough lifetime left to waste it owning my own space. Let me get everybody else's knowledge in on the discussion and help push us and even challenge us to say, well, I don't think it's that way. It's this way. And so
Right.
let's
see it as a grand puzzle. And so
Yeah.
we're a little piece, you're a little piece. Can we talk to all the other pieces? And when
Sure.
we assemble them, that is a better and more accurate picture of the universe and who we truly are than
Sure.
any one piece alone. So we come together in community. And
Yeah, and that just wraps up the whole hero's journey.
Yes.
Maybe perhaps the separateness is part of that dark night and the final test before we go home with a newfound wisdom, which would be after whatever happens, is happening happens. All the chaos in the world and our culture is over. We will have to come together with our newfound wisdom and rebuild something better together.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
we're all in one little boat spinning through space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we leave, I wanted to ask if either or both of you have a particular quote that you might like to share or something that you enjoy that you like to, sort of sums things up for you if you have something handy. But I also would like our listeners to be able to know how to get a hold of you. So can you maybe share with us maybe your website or whatever way that you want folks to be able to reach you and contact you?
Well, I'll answer the second part of your question first. The Institute's name is complicated for people, Cuyamungue Institute.com. We also have abbreviated domain names like Kuya, Cuya, institute.com. That way you don't have to spell the whole name out each time. And so you can join us for that. Or you can go lauralee.com,
Okay.
paulrobear.com. All will take us to the same website to find us.
Many roads lead to the Cuyamungue Institute.
Yeah. I mean,
Such a posture.
starting out in the world of media back in the early 90s, on the mid 90s, I started buying up domain names. So we probably have about
Okay.
35 domain names, but it all points to the same place. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, quotes.
Um,
Our motto from the radio show was, life is best lived as an adventure. So let's go exploring. And
Right.
I think we're all doing that. And I loved My Life is a Prayer, whom you quoted earlier, Linnell. And we're very intrigued with Thomas Berry and
Yes.
Teilhard de Chardin. I know we all
Right.
share them as touchstones and so many others. Just
Right.
to say that the universe is alive and it's replete with consciousness and adventure and potential and opportunity. And aren't we lucky to be alive at this time? Yes, it's challenging, but it's always been. And let's just step up and embrace and just celebrate. Just celebrate. And with one another, all the better. So
Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
both. It's
you.
been lovely to
Yeah.
be with you, and I've
Yeah.
really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so
yes.
much.
Yeah,
And
me
Ella,
too.
we
Thank
look
you.
forward to hosting you both as guests for
Thank
future.
you.
We have
Thank
so
you.
much to share.
I would be honored. Yeah.
That would be lovely.
We'd
Thank
be
you so
honored.
much for your time today. It's been really
Thank you.
rich and deep and yeah, fun. So
And
Blessings.
fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Blessings.
Bye-bye.
Blessings.
blessings.